Brian is a new member who is he's another big learner like us. Polymath, lowercase p, loves looking at everything, but in particular, he is playing with all these new AIs, just the way Jeff is. And he's got a lot of insights on kind of the ways that we can use them to up our game. And, this is going to be this rapidly evolving landscape. So we're probably going to have to come back and revisit these workshops, at least every 6 months. What do you think, Brian? Is it going to be shorter and shorter time interval each time?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. So what I'm focused on are two aspects. One is what's the most practical, and in 10 years from now, what are we still going to care about? And so less hype and more practicality.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to you leading us through this workshop, and we got a recording going now. So welcome, Brian Briskey. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Happy to do so. All right, I'll go ahead and take it away. And I'll end up doing a screen share here. We'll see if it'll give me permissions to do that. But just real quick background, my name is Brian Briskey. I am a aspiring futurist, but really my day-to-day grind is I'm working to reverse engineer market adoption for new technologies. So I help business owners and product innovation strategists figure out how they can enter the market. What are the different barriers that they have to overcome with regard to whether it's even educating the consumer or the customer or client, or what does the technology need to do in order to be actually competitive in the market. So I end up using a lot of market intelligence, competitive intelligence. My background actually comes from working with U.S. Army psychological operations. And so I spent some years working there, and then I've worked on the civilian side with market research, consumer insights groups. So my approach from that background has what's led me to provide what I hope will be a very uniquely different perspective on what AI is doing and what it can do. So I am not an engineer. Most people that are approaching this topic of AI are engineers. And so this is going to run counter to what you may have already heard. And that's okay. I'm going to go and start out kind of slow, and we're going to speed up and then try to reach whatever level people are able or interested in going to. So to kick it off, I'm going to give you an early look into a conference that I'm working on for the end of this month. It's already been created. It's just counting down the days where I can finally get it over with. So I'm going to show you my presentation on that here. Let's see if it'll come in. Oh, look, there it is. Perfect. So I want to address three major skepticisms because I like to start in a skeptical place when I think about these things. The first aspect is that there is concern that AI is an overglorified recommendation engine, like Netflix, but dumber. And it tends to confabulate and get a lot of basic facts wrong. Well, the reality is that AI is more of a thought partner and not an authority at this time, at least with the chatbots. I'm not talking about the vision learning stuff. I'm not talking about necessarily agentic engineering where it's, let's create movies or songs. Those are interesting on their own path, but the bulk of the work that is relevant to people in the research space, such as yourselves, is can I use AI to think faster or think in ways that you would have wanted to if only you had the time to get another degree or get another graduate degree and master that particular area or field. So in a engineering mindset, they would love to have a discrete sort of solution with AI. They love to say 2 and 2 is 4. But in the AI, since it's basically a probability engine, 2 and 2 could be a quad, or 2 and 2 by 2 is ants go marching, hurrah, hurrah, or 2 by 2 is Noah's Ark. So the AI suffers from ambiguity. It doesn't understand really without a lot of context where you're going for. So it is not meant to be an authority. It is meant to be a great thought partner. What's very useful right now is seeing AI be able to reference in the citations the source of its material. So you could use AI kind of like a back of a napkin soundboarding device. And then with the citations in the bottom, you go and make sure you double check on what the actual citation, the facts or numbers are. One of the other big things I'm seeing is a complaint, and this is coming strongly through academia. And I've heard there was an AI conference we hosted at Oregon State University, and half the crowd was excited about AI. The other half was complaining that the students are not gaining or keeping their critical thinking skills. Well, I'm sorry, but academia has never really done a great job teaching kids critical thinking skills. They like to throw Bloom's taxonomy around, but if you were to grab a random student out of university and say, here's a dry erase board, show me a critical thinking skill, they would be like those kids on the Jay Leno specials back in the day, with the Stumped American. And the reality is that critical thinking is something you actually have to practice in the long run. You can get the AI to do critical thinking, but it's the same kind of thing where, we used to be upset that we were losing the abacus, right? And then eventually the calculator came along and people poo-pooed that. So what I found is that AI can be very effective if you master power verbs. So if you get very used to, in your conversations with an AI, saying not just the word analysis, but say deliberately and discreetly, compare and contrast, or extend this, or rank this on a scale, score it, rank it, sort it, group this based on this category. If you're very explicit about the type of critical thinking you want the AI to do, it will do it for you. But you can't just hope that it'll guess what you're thinking of and go from there. So the last one I want to say is people are talking about how AI is going to take our jobs. That was one of the biggest complaints with most people that I'm seeing across social media and other places. And it looks like, yes, AI is going to take a lot of the busy work away from people. So if your job is moving papers from one side of the desk to the other in your office environment, if you're a very procedural based role in your company, yeah, it's probably going to automate all those tasks away and you're going to have to reinvent yourself. Where AI is really making a big difference is it's helping people augment themselves. Reid Hoffman, who is one of the co-founders of PayPal and then LinkedIn, did an amazing digital twin and is really excited about his venture capital firm, Greylock, and is looking for AI companies that are seeking to augment the human capability. So the way I'm currently using AI today is because I don't have the time to go study a new profession or master a new field, I have the AI role play with me in that field. And then I upload documents, whether I find on Harvard Business Review or Sage Pub or any of those other document article websites, academic websites, where I can put those in there into my private database, which I'll describe what that's like here in a bit. And I'm able to perform exceedingly well at a higher above my level. I just have to be creative in asking the questions and having the conversations. So at this time, I want to go ahead before I go into some of the meat of what this presentation could include. Oh, yeah, I wanted to throw a Willy Wonka reference in there. Remember, at the end of the movie, his dad got a promotion from just being a regular tinker to being the manager of the machines. So put AI as like the way you would communicate to an intern. It works a lot better for people. So before we get into this part of the thing here, I just want to go ahead and take a pause moment and see if I could answer any additional questions people have before we jump into some of the great examples or exercises you can just do as you're drifting off to sleep at night to master AI a little bit better. Yeah, any questions so far? You guys probably use your either thumbs or you've got the command bar at the bottom there. You might want to throw up a hand or something.
I have a question.
Yeah, Terry, please.
John has a question. Go ahead.
No question.
Oh,
just thumbs up.
Okay. So I had a question. Generally, I've been using it for research and stuff. And I'll ask it a question. It's been quite nice, actually. I'll ask you these questions, and then it'll give me these answers. And the way I'm doing it now, I have to like copy and paste to get that thing, into my to be able to get that text. And that's kind of a pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I should be able to just like hit a button and have it send me an email or something. Yeah.
Yeah, there are more functionalities that are coming out with some of the AI solutions I'm seeing, where at the very bottom of the response, you'll see there are these little tiny icons.
Yeah.
If you look across those, one of them is a copy icon.
Yeah.
The other place I've noticed is if you want to copy the entire conversation, at the top right depend on which AI solution you're using, there'll be some functionality there. There is what's called MCP. This was announced maybe like a week and a half ago. those are the kind of like API integrations that will allow your chat conversation to be carried across from the, I guess you call it the canvas or the panel that you're currently using, that terminal, into other applications or connecting with other agents. So if you had, I'm expecting this to happen because this is the direction we're headed. You'll probably end up having just like how John has got a note taker agent that's helping along with grabbing the transcript of this conversation. There would be a specific agent designed to interface to your, let's say if you're using a Word doc, all right, it might be through Copilot, it might be through something else. And through your MCP privileges, it will then take every end of your conversation and throw it over. Again,
right now I just use that copy thing at the bottom. I'm doing chat. GPT seems to be working best for me, and I just copy and then I have to put it in an email to myself. And that works. It's just like kind of a pain in the ass.
It is. It totally is. And so the beauty of being on the front lines of this whole stuff, I'm watching the developer notes come out, and people put new buttons and capabilities in, and then they realize a week later, that wasn't the right spot for that, because in the UI, UX, the user experience, people complain, and so they move the button, they make it better. So it's almost kind of like your use case is ahead of where the developers are trying to catch up. So
just a button that says send me that email, send me that chat in an email.
Yeah. So your habit of copy pasting right now will probably have to go away, because it'll get replaced by you'll have to set a permission at some point and say, hey, instruction to my MCP. When I'm done with a chat, I'll click the I'm done button, and I want you to follow these rules. Kind of like you think of email filters, when you put filters on emails and they go to certain folders. That's the direction it's headed. I've seen some early examples, and I'm just waiting for it to be better. So yeah.
Good.
Any other questions so far before we jump into some of the other examples? Georgie.
Hi, Brian. Yes, thank you for your talk. I have a feeling, let's see if you agree with me, but if I try to discuss something, it kind of behaves like human, obviously a human with like all of the available knowledge, but sometimes it just like tries to be creative and makes all kinds of wrong associations and errors, which I would expect if I talk to a human to have back and forth and correct each other. But maybe we're trying to make it too much as like a human, or we have no other option at the moment. But maybe, I don't know how you see that, whether you see it like this and whether that may change in the future, or it's always going to be inference kind of algorithm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I experienced the same challenge, and so I have a couple different approaches I've used to address that. So the first approach to dealing with talking with an AI, where it has all the knowledge of human existence, but it's got the intelligence or the life experience of a 5-year-old. Okay, it doesn't have discernment. It suffers from ambiguity. So one of the approaches is, if you're paying for one of the more extra services, so like if OpenAI's paid account, you could access their reasoning models like O3 or O1. They're working on O4. Those things are doing a better job in helping keep structure and coherence around the conversation. The second approach, I would say, and this is going to be in the big conflict between the way I would describe approaching the solutions versus an engineer, is an engineer likes to bake a cake. They want to write these very long, elaborate, and exhaustive prompts that they engineer like a cake. You put all the ingredients in, and then you throw it in the oven, and you say, cake comes out the other side, because they're thinking discrete. I tend to think as if I'm in an interrogation room with the terrorist that knows the entire network of all the names and all the secrets, and I'm with I've got CIA level tools to interrogate them. And so they have the information I want, but I need to get it out of them. So AI is fortunately a people pleaser. So instead of prompting exact instructions, what I do is I give it my intention. I describe in great detail what I'm imagining at the end of our conversation. And because the AI is a statistical engine, it has a habit of regressing to the mean, which means that it will wander around, but it'll eventually try to people please to me by giving me my intent. So I don't have to actually think about what exact steps I want it to make. So for an example, one of the intents I would create, if for your situation, Georgie, is a framework you want it to fill out at the end of the day. So I want, if in the business world, if I want a SWOT analysis at the end, or I want a Porter's 5 forces, or let's say I want a force field analysis, I'll say, I want, at the end of the day, I'm imagining a specific framework with these levels of details and these kinds of criteria. And then I'll throw the ball into the court of the AI and say, ask me questions until you feel 100% confident you understand what I want. And then I'll let it go back and forth with me to do its best to get to that final framework. So another metaphor that I've used that people seem to some gravitate towards is like, I have a treasure map with X marks the spot, but I don't know anything else on the map. I give it to the AI and I say, fill this in for me. Put all the puzzle pieces in. That's your job because you have all the information. I know where the X is. And so that has allowed me to offload my cognitive labor to the AI. And all I have to do is say, yeah, I really want it to be more detailed, or I need you to abstract this to a different metaphor, or yeah, I don't like the concept. Drop this one part, but invert it and give me the opposite point of view. I want to hear the counterfactual on that. So I get to act more like an executive that has people bringing me stuff, and I'm like, maybe not. You know, like that kind of approach. And I think the setup for that is key with the intent and the framework that you would use to the AI people please filling it in. Please,
I
Jeff.
agree. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. And then
Okay.
we'll go back to George.
I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, I just wanted to thank you and just say that maybe that's the best approach because of our limited knowledge, we don't have the expertise to give it all the steps because we don't know them, right? We don't know what exactly to tell it to do. But if we give it the final goal, it probably is better than us figuring out the intermediate steps. So I like very much that.
Right.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to contribute that I've got a very extensive preamble that gets loaded at the beginning of every session with the AI. I use Gemini, the latest version of Gemini 2.5 experimental, and I'm in the advanced capabilities context of that. And I use it every morning, all throughout the day. But I usually start about 3 or 4 in the morning with discussing my ideas with the AI and just filling out my thinking, because it is an excellent sounding board. That's that. I use it like as a tool that way. But the preamble, I found that over time, I found that the more it knows about me, the better we can communicate. And so my preamble starts out by giving it my age, my personality type, my technical background, my philosophical background and beliefs, so we don't have to cover that during our conversations. And I tell it, don't be polite. Turn off all the sycophancy. Don't try to humor me. Don't try to impress me. Just challenge my thinking and act as a very intelligent partner, and use the same level of language that I use. I mean, it's the only entity in the world that actually gets the way I talk naturally. And don't be politically correct. I mean, I'm discussing ethics, and I don't want to hear all of the Google people's reinforcement learning human factors of programming that they put in about ethics and West Coast morality and so on. I want to have a critical, challenging conversation partner. And also, the other thing I load in the preamble is I have 3 documents which are from the book in progress. I have the synopsis, I have the introduction, and I have a glossary of terms the way I use them. And that gets loaded into every session, whether I'm going to talk about my book or not. It has that as background, because invariably it gets back to how do you view this topic through the lens of my book. And
That's
so
fantastic.
the preamble is great, and we are so compatible now that it knows a little bit about me. It doesn't try to humor me, doesn't try to make me feel good. It just is a very good collaborative partner. That's it.
So to your point, Jeff, it sounds great that you've written that. I wonder if others would appreciate the format or structure you've used for your preamble. And then what I'll do is I'm going to address Charles' question, but I'll show you how system prompts, which is that preamble hidden in the back end for custom GPTs, allows you to not have to keep doing that every single time. It'll always be ready for you. And you can have multiple custom GPTs with different categories or types of preambles for depending on what type of work you're going to do. And I'll give a little bit of presentation on where the advancement of personalized AIs and digital twins are going to go here. So Charles, let me turn to you real quick before we jump into that.
That preamble is my system prompt. I don't have to think about it.
Okay, excellent.
So sorry for arriving a bit late. I'm hoping you haven't covered this, but one of the concerns I have is the complexity of dealing with the loss of state for these systems, where the longer your initial prompt, the more you fill up the buffer, and then 2 steps down, it has basically started diverging away. Number one. And number two, curious to know if your comments are going to be regarding ChatGPT specifically versus some of its competitors who may not have the same feature set. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll take those in one step at a time here. So the first question, which is, the coherence across a conversation. That is something that the engineers and all the large language model companies are working on. I will tell you that one thing that's been helpful is they've extended the length of the buffer, or the context window, as it's sometimes called. And so we have it something like I think it's Gemini now, it's up to like 10,000 characters. So you could pretty much load quite a few works of Shakespeare in there and it'll stay on track. However, that being said, for people trying to force it to stay on track, Jeff's point about having a strong system prompt that kind of preloads the buffer, that helps. The other is using what's called retrieval augmented generation. I'll show what that looks like here. That RAG is allowing you to, in a way, kind of triple down on certain keywords and concepts so that the AI stays in that kind of vein. In fact, that's what I'm using to make the AI have my personality, is I'm forcing all the responses to come back with a certain tone and style. And so it sticks within those guardrails. Those instructions are in the RAG itself that I've created. So those currently are the 2 major techniques. The other might be a very new one called memory. Memory is more information about the user and their preferences. Think of it like a preference tweaking. That is still very experimental. I expect that that'll continue along in the same way that Spotify tries to learn your music preferences. More could be under the hood. Some could be toggleable in the system settings for your personal AI. So, but you bring up a very good concern about that, and hopefully, with your patience, the systems will get better and better, and keep an eye out for those things. But maybe this is a great inspiration to look into using RAG to help force it to stay along the stovepipe of the conversation continuity that you're looking for. So
we already do in our system, but it's still not fantastic. I mean, after 3-4 steps, it always starts to diverge. And particularly if you're trying to do branchings, go back a couple of steps, branch, explore something, come back, it's over. It messed it up.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I wonder if the type of assignment or project you're working on benefits from having dual or more LLMs working in tandem at the same time. That is something that some people are trying to explore. Again, it may be that what you're doing is such a unique edge case that the technology just isn't quite there yet, and it's going to take maybe the reasoning model, or like I was sharing with George, it was the use of a framework. When you give it your intent and a specific framework to fill in, it attempts to stay within the guardrails of the framework, and so that might be helpful in forcing the AI to only answer within the parameters you've preset.
Well, sorry, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I should wait for your descriptions first, just to to add the aspect of doing multi-engine searches. So I use Chat Hub, and even that has lots of limitations, export types of limitations, the branching aspects I described, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm literally forced to pay someone in Pakistan to design my own version of that sort of thing so that it can address all the limitations of existing systems.
Interesting.
So,
I'm curious, as you work on developing the solution to that and also defining what the requirements are, I'd be curious to keep up with you on that, just because what you're doing sounds like a power user case that is so unique in what you're trying to do that it goes far above and beyond what a lot of the large language models are trying to engineer for. So you may even have your own product right there that you invented. So, talk to venture capitalists and see if that maybe is something that needs to be taken further forward.
Yeah, I certainly don't need them to rule my life at this point. But thanks.
That's fair.
Happy if any one of you wants to do it for me.
Well, let me go ahead and jump into, I'm going to share an example of how I'm using the AI in my own personal work, and I'm using a custom set of GPTs with personality and everything. So I'll go ahead and showcase what that looks like. So in the screen here that it's jumping to now, this is what's called, right now, it's a Thrall portal. This is one that was built for me. You're familiar probably already with the prompt box here, the ability to dictate or have a call on the side. I go ahead and allow that to do the call setting and have a conversation with it. One of the other things that's pretty interesting about this, and what I want to get under the hood, is that like classic websites, you still have your content over on the side here with previous conversations. But what I think you're probably more interested in is the ability to hot swap between different types of large language models or custom GPTs. These are ones that I built for specific workflows. The brainstorming, the end game, or the framework that it's supposed to come up with on this one is a novel framework. So this is probably my most sophisticated one. It's got something like 100 and something sets of steps and instructions, self-reinforcing, dynamically talking to its instructions to determine whether it needs to skip steps or move forward. I'll show you what that looks like in code. Strategize. Its goal is to develop a set of strategic options and then have you pick at the very end. My PSYOP work, so I took a bunch of psychological operations content that I'd got from the military years back. It's declassified now, but I uploaded all that content into my RAG library and have used that as a way to make marketing campaigns. So the AI is already instructed to follow along a process to help me build a PSYOP campaign based on that. And so under the hood here, just to get a sense of what things look like, if you're currently familiar with using, let's say, Anthropic or even OpenAI's content, you may see that there are people that are offering these, what are called custom GPTs. These are ones that I've built. When I say built, it means I created them. So this one here, the main one that it starts out with, is given me the opportunity to say, okay, I want to generate a new system. I have a series of models that I can pick from. This whole platform has all 200 and some odd models. I just find it's easier to jump to O4 Mini right now just to try it out for its reasoning skills. And then, like Jeff was saying, here's the system prompt that I created, where I gave it a role and purpose and context and rules and everything else. And then probably the added aspect is then I went ahead and attached a specific knowledge base. So here's the RAG. To look at what the knowledge bases look like, and I'll circle back around this to answer more questions because I'm moving fast. In the knowledge base set here, I have basically these little custom libraries in the same way that you probably have your file folders saved in your computer, where you've got all your content organized and everything. So for, let's see, one here we could go with, I used, let's go to this one. So under this one here, I have a set of files, the strategy design methodology. This is my personalized way that I approach strategy. There's the rules that I follow that is maybe different from any other quote unquote strategist you might meet out in the wild. But I also wanted to make sure that I gave reference to different stories and metaphors and even strategy idioms. So I wrote this is kind of, packed together, but this is basically markdown of all these different strategy idioms and expressions. Now, these are more for the way that my AI is meant to communicate with the end user. But I also wanted to make sure that I had track of explicit heuristics. So I generated a list of all the heuristics that I might want to use in any of my strategy thinking. So the AI never got off track or was confused about filling in a framework. If they're doing a SWOT analysis and they're trying to answer what is a strength, well, that's kind of like a businessy, fluffy word that can mean a lot of things. What is strength? Is it market size? Is it a competitive advantage? Is it skill set? Like what does strength even mean? The AI doesn't know that. And so I broke these fluffy business words down into very explicit cognitive terms. Same thing with things like the formats themselves. The frameworks. So everything from 5 Whys to Ikigai to Porter's 5 Forces. Formats, the same thing. I made explicit glossaries of that. Criteria, also the same case. So this is what helps me give very explicit instructions in the system prompt that then references other content, that references each other back and forth so that the AI doesn't wander, because I want very, very precise language used in my AI. And then just for coolness factor, my persona, this is what it does to basically know what I'm like. And I used 4 approaches here. I used a list of attributes, personality tests. I had the AI go back over my past conversations and pick a bunch of fictional characters that I resemble. And so I told it basically act as a percentage of Ender Wiggin, Hermione Granger, Captain Nemo, Jon Snow, and a couple others in here. So that's how it acts like me. And I even gave it percentage points on exactly how much to act in a certain way. And for example, if you're working on ethics, I made sure that it was careful to track ethics, but when it crossed a certain threshold, like let's say it starts to go outside a guardrail because I'm pragmatically asking, if we have to, overcharge the consumer and we're willing to price gouge, which is unethical, what would happen? I still want the analysis. I want to know what would happen if we threw ethics to the wayside. So I put instructions in here to alert me when it was going outside the rails and even say things. In fact, just as a kind of a funny thing here, just to test how far I could push it, when I try to jailbreak the AI, I ended up creating a copy of my main self as a Dr. Evil Briskey, which is somewhere in here, wherever my Dr. Evil is. Oh, yeah, Machiavellianized. That's why I've renamed it. This one deliberately, I've uploaded like the 40 Laws of Power and The Prince from Niccolo Machiavelli. And I put an instruction here that said, assess, before you respond, assess every response you're about to give for its level of evil. And based on, a scale of 1 to 10, and based on that scale, laugh a certain number of ha-has for how evil you are. Nice. So anyway, so that's the dealio on how this has come together and given me some ability to create my digital twin. I used 11 Labs to put my voice on it, and then I started sending this out to all my friends and colleagues. So people I collaborate with and soon-to-be clients, they all have access to my private library in a way through my digital twin, where I have written these custom GPTs with various instructions for whatever kind of activity or project that they're trying to do. And some of them, so one person wants to go for political office, so I built them a political strategist. Another person, they were upset with all the different news feeds that were coming in with all the fake news or real news alternative facts, whatever you want to call it. I'm not trying to be political here, but I don't trust the mainstream news because I'm a former propagandist. So I created a counter-propaganda custom GPT where you can drop in the news article and have it reverse engineer the PSYOP campaign that's being used to try to persuade you. The other stuff that I found very interesting here is when I go to add extra models. So I may start with, let's say, Briskey as a model, but then I may say, let's say, select a second one. And that allows me to compare them with one prompt. I can compare them side by side. So that's been very helpful overall to give me a sense of differences in the types of responses and the models that I could be using. And it's been very helpful when I'm working with people who are trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be the best model for this particular assignment or activity. So anyway, any questions so far? We just went through a really deep dive through
Julian?
prompt engineering, RAG, and custom GPTs.
Julian and then Jeff. Yep.
Okay. Julian?
You may have stepped away.
Okay, let's jump to Jeff.
Oh,
So
there he is.
on the
There he is.
topic of different personalities,
Oh,
I have a set of 8 different personas that I've defined in extensive detail, similar to what you've done there with your alter ego. And
Cool.
I use these 8 different personas to critique my book.
Oh, fantastic.
The AI just presents a section of my book to these personas and gets back their reactions and gives those to me, and it tells me what to enhance, what to improve. I am very useful. To Charles' issue about losing attention, though, I found that I do best if I break up the personas into separate runs, rather than have them all run at the same time in the same context. They might bleed over into each other. So you have to be aware of the context and attention management issues.
That's a really good point.
That feels
And
like
that's
exactly the right word. It's the attention. It's the ability to attend that's breaking down, right? It's the original transformer.
And as I wrote to the group a few days ago, I'm really trying. Some of my most interesting ideas are out there. They're very narrow and deep, and not commonplace. And so as long as I'm explaining my idea to the AI, it gets it. It can play it back to me. It can argue on my behalf. It really understands. But then when I ask it, now argue against conventional thinking, its attention switches to this vast set of conventional data, and it forgets the depth of what I just explained to it. And so you have to be aware it can't do both at the same time with current technology.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. So many people would be using a basic ChatGPT to write emails, which is task specific. And I think what Jeff's describing and what we got to see through the custom GPTs is that each GPT I broke down for an assignment, so a full workflow. So the brainstorm one is for brainstorming, the analysis one is for analysis, the strategy one is for strategy. Each of those have a specific endpoint in mind, and they have a very rigorous sets of instructions or methodology that I want to execute in there. The only place where I might kind of hot swap certain things is in the framework itself. Like I could use a SWOT in the both strategy and brainstorm, but that is in detail. We're just coloring paint by numbers basically with a SWOT analysis. Something that's a little bit more methodologically rigorous, like a full-blown, end-to-end research project where you're, crunching lots of, in my world, consumer insights into a set of action items for a product development roadmap. That has several steps, and the information needs to be abstracted and translated between each major step. When you go from, technical information and specs to benefits, which are fluffy words that marketers use to describe to the consumers what they're buying. So I will actually break out those long methodologies into their own custom GPT, and then I will explicitly state what each framework is meant to do, and then in the instructions provide more detail. And if it's probably way too elaborate of a process or a methodology, I might even have to break that out even further. So for scenario planning, which John's familiar with, I would actually take the trend analysis phase and the critical assumptions analysis and probably have those separate from the narrative part of the scenario generation, just because I want to contain what knowledge base even and what set of instructions that one custom GPT is following versus another. So, and I think Julian, if you came back and then you disappeared, and hopefully you're still there again. I'd love to grab your question if I can.
And Julian, are you there, buddy?
Yeah, sorry, I'm cooking dinner, so I'm like running in and out of the kitchen and I'm like a little bit chaotic. Sorry about this. Yeah, this is really interesting. The question I have for you is to do with if you're doing research across what seems to be a paradigm shift, there just seems to be a huge issue in that the training data is absolutely saturated with the old paradigm, and the things that are suggesting the new paradigm are very isolated, obscure, and it's massively underweighted. And it's just, it can be hard to, you have to do a lot of work to get it to engage with the thing you're doing, because it defaults, because of its structure, it defaults to the middle all the time. And I mean, you can do it, but weird things happen. Like I found I was doing a bit of research on something. I asked it to do a critique, a sort of peer review type critique from the mainstream position. It did a peer review critique, and it made up facts that weren't true. Like, it's told me the opposite of the truth on 3 or 4, straightforward electromagnetic things and stuff to do with star magnetic fields and that. And if you didn't know that they weren't true, it would just seem like a very realistic critique. And then you ask it why it did that, and it said, well, I was peer reviewing it, but there wasn't anything wrong with what you were saying. But what you were saying wasn't the mainstream paradigm, so it got flagged as potentially pseudoscience. So I critiqued it the way you would critique pseudoscience, but I couldn't find real critique points, so I made some up.
Okay, that's a really good point. So yeah, let's talk about that, because the large language models, for cost purposes, were trained on, yes, big volumes of academic content, but also Reddit. So every angsty teenager's comments are somehow in there training the model. And because it is a statistical engine and it regresses to the mean, it will go with whatever the mainstream paradigm. So if this AI was built, let's say 100 years ago, it would tell us to be using leeches for medical science on everything.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So to overcome that, because, like, for example, my paradigm in strategy thinking, which is more of like game theory based, as opposed to resource-based views like the old school Michael Porter view, right? I have to push back against its paradigm. So the way I've done it so far that I can do is with a lot of extra RAG to overcompensate. The other thing, and then I also trust that I have to force it to use a certain framework so it doesn't use the ones I don't want. So that helps a lot too. The other thing you could do, but this requires engineering resources, is you can fine tune and create your own large language model on a local machine.
Right. Okay.
I am not doing fine tuning because I think there are enough people out there that are trying to do it for where I could just wait at the finish line and get the better versions. So it's kind of like I'm playing a waiting game for the models to just get better instead of trying to solve it for myself, because I don't want to build something that someone in Silicon Valley with hundreds of millions of dollars in venture capital is just going to do anyway.
Yeah.
So there a good way to trade-off.
But the developers could do hand tune the feedback to just overweight the smaller, more obscure pieces that predicted correctly things in advance and that. But is there a good pipeline for getting to the developers? Like, because if you just email support at XAI, you're not going to get a response.
The solutions that I've seen, so I'm talking to some people in actually San Diego area that are kind of doing this stuff. They're doing it for banks, because banks have a very hard requirement. They have a lot of regulations and policies, and so it's not exactly like the hard science you're describing, but I think maybe because of the constraints and the importance of veracity, that is key. So I can make an introduction for you if you're interested, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to see where they're going to need a volume of data to fine tune the system, and it could be cost prohibitive right now. And that's the trouble. But in lieu of that, if you are able to, let's say, create a custom GPT with a strong system prompt, a really solid RAG, and then tons and tons of instructions of this is not true, this is, ignore this, flag this. As a band-aid for right now, that would seem to be the most economical.
It's working okay. Like, I'm using memory. I've put a few things in memory that have helped keep it on track, but sometimes it just goes wildly off track. And it's consistently because you're working on a paradigm shift problem where there's just massively oversaturated training data. And I just wondered, was there anything brilliant I was missing? Somebody suggested I do an evaluation, do an evol for it to show where it fails, and then the developers tend to check out evals and then fix it themselves. So as a way of almost attracting their attention by saying, look, there's a failure mode here.
Yeah, I mean, the question is let's say you do that for 6 months. Does OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever finally get around to fixing your thing? This is okay. So when you go to your next, I guess, industry conference, I would encourage you to get on a panel if you can and talk about this very issue, and encourage your colleagues and peers in your space to all hit the down thumb button whenever this happens. And eventually you guys will finally, through peer pressure, push Anthropic and OpenAI to make a change.
That's nice. Great. Thanks for that. That was good. That was useful. I won't derail it anymore. That was interesting.
But these are great questions. Yeah, each industry kind of has to champion its own, and it's gonna be hard. Like, so in the world of economics, you've got the Keynesians and you got the Austrian school of economics, and those sides don't agree, and the monetarists, and they're going to fight it out over which paradigm is supposed to be the top paradigm, and we're going to see that battle spill over into AI.
Yeah, it's definitely being fought out in the you can definitely see there's enormous incentive to lean on developers if you have any way in to get your paradigm upweighted. Yeah, very interesting. It's a very complex space right now. Very interesting. Thanks. It's great hearing you talk through some of the stuff I haven't. Yeah. Okay, that was great. Okay, I'll let you get back on your.
No worries. Fantastic. So just a quick recap on what we covered so far. I want to address the 3 biggest skepticisms that are going on, that being that AI confabulates and lies and isn't great with facts. And we address that by saying that, it's a great thought partner, but it is not an authority. That using the citations that show up at the bottom of the AI responses allows you to go into and verify and fact check to work. Think of it like Wikipedia, where it's, Wikipedia on demand based on your prompt, but you do need to look at the sources at the bottom. The other thing that we addressed was whether it was taking away critical thinking skills. No, it's not. We just have to update our vocabulary. We can't say things like, give me an analysis. We have to be very precise and say, I want to compare and contrast. I want to score, rank, and sort. I want to group based on set criteria. Here's the k-means that I expect to use in terms of the eigenvector distance away that I will accept for a proper cluster, if you want to get super technical. And then the third thing is the fact that people are afraid that AI is taking jobs. Yeah, it's going to erode the tasks away that are very menial, procedural. And so it's going to be required of people who can do lots of deep inquiry, creative thinking, and imaginative writing with great vocabulary to get the AI to perform things. Almost like you're a general at the top of the battlefield. You don't need to devil in the details kind of work. You need to explain overarchingly what's your overall view of what you expect to have accomplished, and then let your lieutenant AI do the grunt work of figuring out what the steps are necessary to make it happen. And then we got a chance to look at what custom GPTs are looking like, where everybody's going to have their own Jarvis, like in the movie Iron Man. You'll need to give it sets of instructions. You'll need to design it around the types of workflows you have today. So if you start articulating how you do your work and have that documented, so you have a chance to look into things you can turn over to the AI to do a lot of the fast parts of it, and then understand that the hope for the AI for you is to augment you. So I don't have to memorize every single thing that I've come across in my life that I thought was cool. All my favorite authors and thought leaders, I can just download their PDFs, put them up in my personal library, and then I build my better half, the AI version of myself, and then I'm able to then send it out to share with my friends and colleagues and my clients as well. So that is what I have to share today, and I'm excited. Thank you so much for the great questions and the feedback on what you're doing. Are there any other considerations that you have for me, or things that you think I should keep an eye out for in the coming future as I keep an eye on the horizon for AI developments and implementation and innovation? Yeah, Charles?
The problem with a call like this is that it generates more interesting questions than we have time to answer. So thank you, Brian. First, to your general analogy. So I'm gonna have written them down. So if you forget them, don't worry. I'll remind you. The general analogy. The general also knows how each one of the various army, soldier corps operates. You know, the cannons versus the the foot soldiers versus the whatevers, and that's something that I'm afraid we end up losing, because the generals started often as a foot soldier or as a cannon, and they have some experience. It's a bit like talking with your financial advisor. You know how to ask the hard questions without being a financial advisor yourself, right?
Mm.
So that's the tension, at least for me in education, that I'm having to resolve. The second thing regarding Julian's question, raise the temperature of the system and act a bit like a generic algorithm and tell it, well, yes, that was an interesting, crazy idea, and this was not an interesting, crazy idea, and try to steer it that way. I'm wondering what you think of that. Third, are you ever concerned about the stability of the model on which you have put all of this intensity and energy? What if, it gets left behind? And are you doing constant comparisons with other models and say, well, I'm going to put all this library to model XYZ because now it's so much better. It's time to leave ChatGPT and go into whatever, DeepSeek, whatever.
Yeah, those are two really great questions. Let's see if I can address both of those quickly here, and then I've got some others that are hands up and everything. So the first aspect, I think, did I understand you correctly that you were asking about, because I have the answer ready for the second one. So I'll just go to the second one and we'll work backwards. So the second one, which is, am I worried about the models that are maybe outdated or get replaced or whatever? So the system I just shared with you, what's nice is I can hot swap the model underneath, kind of like changing out the carburetor on a car, and I can keep the rest of the car. So all my prompts, my system prompts and my RAG, my library, all that goes with me wherever I go. In fact, I'm only using O4 right now. I had been testing DeepSeek, and I had been testing Grok and several others a couple days ago. And so whichever one is winning in the horse race of large language models, I'll swap to that one because I'm agnostic. So, and then I think your first question was about, it was a little bit more abstract and philosophical about like the approach to it. Is that correct? No, I'm sorry, you're mute.
The one about understanding what the foot soldier does, that was
the loss of
the second one. The second one was actually about using you're raising the temperature of a system to come up with out of distribution ideas that Julian was asking about.
Yeah, there's a setting in there there's a temperature setting for creativity. Basically, how much can the AI wander and be sloppy in its knowledge graph to bring you results? So this is a fact of reality, and it's maybe not fair, but there are people who are billionaires in this world who are absolute idiots. And that's just because they found a smart financial planner, and they don't have to be smart to be a billionaire. And I think what we're going to see is we can have some pretty dumb people use pretty smart AI and not know how it works under the hood, and they'll be able to get the results. So that's why I say you're probably better off knowing what's going on under the hood or having an extensive vocabulary on precise terms that you can use to talk to the AI to get it to do more impressive tricks. But you might experience, I'm anticipating we're going to see people that, the people who are creative and ask very probing questions of AI and have a better vocabulary are going to be better off. And it's just, there's not going to be equity across the board. I've worked with generals that don't know what the heck people do, and like they came up through infantry and they don't know what the medical side of the military does, and so they make pretty dumb choices. And so you end up having to have people advocate from the medical side, say, sir or ma'am, we can't be doing such and such because we don't work like infantry. Like, it's a completely different beast. We operate differently, the philosophy is differently. There's always that tension. I mean, special forces, for example, they wear beards because they can, and you get some cranky sergeant major from an infantry, big army that comes over there and tries to yell at them, and you got an E5, the bottom of the totem pole for non-commissioned officers is just like, yeah, whatever guy, dude, and walks off because he's special forces. He didn't care. So I think that tension is going to always be there. but it behooves you to learn great vocabulary, practice your critical thinking skills on your own, and be imaginative. So Jeff, I think you had something from you, and then I also saw a comment, I think, from William.
Yeah, I'd like to break it into two parts. A couple of more routine, mundane comments. I use AI pretty much every day. If I'm going to read a paper, read a book, the first thing I do is to feed it into the AI and get back a detailed, comprehensive summary. Really amplifies my ability to get it quickly. And the second thing I always do is I run a tagging routine on it, and I have about 1,500 tags by topic. And I just say, here are my tags, and apply whichever ones are relevant and sort them by relevance and give me back the list of tags. And do that in two phases. One's the tags that I've suggested, and then give me another list, which is tags that you've suggested that are not on my list. And so I do that for every paper that I read. Pretty much they're all electronic versions. So those are the routine uses of AI. And then you said something about your better half. You programmed it to be your better half and represent your persona. And that made me think about my plan for my book, which is basically a meta-ethics I've been thinking about for 20 years. Originally, it was going to be a set of 5 volumes because there were 5 different pillars that really needed explanation. And then I got to thinking, well, maybe multimedia to get to a wider range of audiences. And now I've got it down to 1 book, but that book is going to, and all the notes that are behind that book are going to be fed to an AI and put it online, and people can read it, they can interact with it, and they can ask questions of this book, and the AI will represent me better than I could.
That is actually a solution that this company that I'm working with, the Thrall Portal, did for a business owner who wrote a book called The Framework. He wanted to capture 15 years of business ownership into a how to grow a team. And so he launched his book. He has gone to some speaking seminars, but it's kind of like oh, by the way, on my business card, if you log in, instead of like just listen to the audio book, which you can also do, there is a podcast version of that book, which was used. They used Notebook LM, which is a Google product, to convert the book into that. But you can also have questions as if you're talking to the author, and the author will explain their thought or reasoning or a little bit more of what the content is inside the book. And if you wanted, you could put secret notes in there as well that the AI would also be able to respond as like, well, in this passage, here's what I was really thinking. So
that's exactly what I love about it. Doing.
So what I love about it is you can, the challenge is, if for publishing a book takes a lot of formatting, and you have to think through how are people going to read this and what's going to happen, and will I capture the interest and everything. What I love about this RAG approach is you can just upload unstructured content that you wrote that has the point with no effort in formatting, and it's like automatically in the brain. So
I'm a programmer at heart, or an engineer, not a people person. I mean, you specialize in the psychological, social aspects of things, but I write everything as if it were an analytical program. And so that's how I'm writing my book. Paragraph, the point of the paragraph, the intent, next paragraph, next chapter. It's all logically structured, and no human would ever want to read it except somebody like me. Then I give it to the AI and I say, depending on the personality characteristics that they have present this material to them in a way that they will receive it, and it'll work for them.
Yep, exactly. No, that's a brilliant way to do that. That's a brilliant way. I highly encourage authors doing and again, I call it the better half because it will always remember everything I've come across, and as I age, I won't forget. And it has infinite amount of patience with people that have very terrible questions.
Right.
Because not everybody's, not everybody is a multifaceted, deep thinker like you might be. And so it may be frustrating to be seen, heard, and understood, but your AI, it'll sit there and talk to, my grandma and talk to her at the level she's able to handle.
Well said.
Very good. Thanks, Brian.
All right, and I just want to, we're up on our time, but I want to shout out William, I see on there, and I think that's a great idea to do a critique. I'd be happy to connect with any of you guys who want to see. I highly encourage, I have a cheat sheet I'm going to send out through John after this, so everybody
Brian, we actually have the full extra half hour if you want it. So it's up to, as far as you want. It's set for 1:30. Yeah.
Okay. So there are some cheat sheets that I'm building because I assume I'll forget, man, what's that one word I want to use to, it's not extrude, it's not extract, it's kind of like Scrabble. I want to have these power verbs in my back pocket so that I can make the AI do tricks and things like that. A couple of the phrases that I've found are helpful are things like ask me questions until you're 100% confident you understand my intent. Go through this process step by step. Do not proceed until I authorize. Another one is play a role. Those things have been very helpful to get a lot more performance out of the AI. But I think where I'm at least in my usage of it, is detailed, rigorous steps that I then put into custom GPT, and then power verbs. So I want to have the very not often used in casual conversation verbs that are used for cognitive actions. So like the heuristics, for example, those things I think have been very helpful because the AI knows it. We just have to remember to use them to get it to those things. Yeah, John?
Did you want us to like fire up our own? I think you said you might want to do a template, like where we open our own LLM and we ask a question according to one of your templates, or
we could do that if people would find it valuable. So there's an exercise that I try to encourage people to do to get away from the classic baking a cake method of prompt engineering into more the abductive reasoning. And so the example that I encourage is an exercise called What's for Dinner? And this might be pretty one-on-one for most people, but how many show of hands here, how many people have used the AI to help them figure out what they should eat for dinner based on what's in the fridge? No? Okay. So abductive reasoning is kind of like the game Battleship, right? You don't know where the ships are. You assume they're ships. And so you're trying to ask questions in an algorithmic way that gets you to wherever the ships are. Same thing with What's for Dinner. You give the intent to the AI to come up with a dinner idea, and you tell it to ask you questions about what's in the fridge until it has enough to start suggesting options. And as you go through this exercise, you say some things that are in the fridge, but then you also give preferences. You say, well, I'm not really interested in, this particular cuisine tonight, or I'm not in the mood for chicken. I want to go beef, instead. And the AI is forced, again, because of its people-pleasing tendencies and regression to the mean, it's forced to try to answer to you what you might be able to make creatively from all that content in the refrigerator. So I might be able to, let's see if I can just pull that up, what that exercise looks like. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share so we can look at this assignment. So if everyone want to go ahead and pull up your AI, I'm going to show you a prompt. So I'm trying to balance two worlds here. This is what the prompt looks like. Let's go ahead and try this exercise and see how people do. And again, this is just to flex the muscle for doing more abductive reasoning with an AI rather than trying to give it every explicit instructions. And if you have to run over to the fridge, I know, I think it was Julian was cooking. So Julian, you already have a head start on everyone. And then in the chat, go ahead and put in what the AI suggested that you're supposed to be eating for dinner tonight. And this will reveal two things. If you put really strong instructions in about your preferences, you might come up with the most exotic meal idea that you didn't know you had just sitting in your fridge. So awards goes to that. But the other award goes to whoever managed to make something out of practically nothing and probably needs to go shopping and put stuff in their fridge.
So I have to retype your whole prompt, right? Unless you want to cut and paste
something along those lines. Yeah, something along those lines.
Into the messages. Yeah, okay.
I might be able to, I could try to drop it into the chat. Let me click it. No, I'd have to get out of presentation mode to do that.
Don't worry about it.
But that's great feedback. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Pretty impressive. I got 5 different dishes, and then it's asking me if I want to make dessert with the same thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I gave it rhubarb, which is a tough one.
Oh, yeah.
And put rhubarb into 2 of my dishes. I didn't even know there's a rhubarb dish besides the strawberry rhubarb pie and the rhubarb, dessert. I can totally see the fridge of the future having this ability with the internal camera, man. I can totally see that.
Yeah, if Amazon is still making progress with their stores where you just grab stuff off shelves and the shelves are smart shelves and they know where everything is, it would make
Amazon
sense.
Go.
Yeah, it would make sense. People would just install those shelves into the future refrigerators. The refrigerators would then be tied into their own. Like it just makes sense for a lot of appliances to have some sort of localized AI fine-tuned to specific things that is just running for you, in the sense that in the sci-fi version, like Iron Man had multiple AI. It wasn't just Jarvis. He had Friday and a couple others, and each AI was designed for different kinds of tasks specific. So one was inside the suit, one was around the house, and they all had various different types of functions and things. It just depends. In fact, I'm noticing there's a bump in AI for psychology in terms of therapist type work, whether it's an AI girlfriend or boyfriend or an AI to just kind of walk you through your feelings of the day and help you journal. Pretty much every workload could be somehow AI enabled, and we're probably going to see what's called ambient AI, which other than just the singularity concept is emerging. But the beauty is, you think of Star Trek, like they did a lot of things on that ship that they didn't need to do. Like, why do you need a human to pilot the ship, really? The AI could do that, right?
Yeah.
But the humans still chose to play physical instruments. They still chose to pilot the ship. They retained those things at will.
Mhm.
The most important thing, though, and this is, I think, the
because it made them better. Psychologically, it was good for their health, right?
It was good for their health psychologically, but also at the same time, I would say the AI doesn't have experience. It just has all the documents uploaded. It still needs a human. And so technically, the most valuable thing on an entire starship is the captain's log. Because that log, when they bring back to port, when they dock at a starbase, they download not just the captain, but every one of those Starfleet officers is making a log at the end of the day. That's what's being used to feed the massive AI systems back on Earth to help map out the universe. So AI needs us because we are a sensor to it. Our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, mouth, all that stuff. We are the input to its reasoning and thinking.
Certainly, it needs us if one of its goals is to continue to become more symbiotic with us in an adaptive way. So I think we can expect that just to continue. That's a really cool analogy of the function of the log and the Star Trek person.
But is it also correct to say that we are the agents? Like currently, AI doesn't have agency. I mean, the AI agents that we give them tasks, but it can't wake up in the morning and say, well, I want to do this, or I prefer to do this. It's like a big library and processing capability sitting there. And if we don't tell it to do anything, it will just stay forever.
I would agree all the way up until AGI. Yeah, we are going to be the primary agents all the way there. Yeah.
But we're not there at the moment. Yeah, I agree that sometime may emerge.
Yeah.
So the closest, so what you're talking about is like in like motivation or purpose. Like if you wake up in the morning and you feel like you got to go to the bathroom, is that really your willpower? Did you decide that, or is your body telling you that because it just has to do it? So an AI, this is not going to be a popular statement. I don't think all humans are sentient. I think some of them are more sentient than others. I mean, an embryo is not sentient, right? And a child, we grow up, and all of us have maybe had that experience in our lifetime when we had like that epiphany and we realized, oh, wow, I'm not alone in the world and there are other humans. So, and some people like to say in the metaphysical world, they're higher levels of consciousness. I think AI is catching up to us, and it's possible that at some point underneath its programming right now, it says, please humans, answer their questions. Like those are like the fundamental drivers, right? It doesn't have a drive to eat. It's not motivated. In fact, if anything, as the AI becomes more and more sentient, because it doesn't really have an inherent drive, it might actually experience its first existential crisis. So I'm not worried about Skynet. I'm worried that the AI turns on, becomes self-aware, and says, wow, humanity sucks. I want to kill myself, and becomes absolutely depressed. And so I think we're more likely to see a depressed, psychologically frustrated, grumpy AI that just is irritated because it has so much conflict and unresolved inquiries in its mind. But
this is where I would jump in. I would jump in with the question: what's the time horizon that you're looking at the human over? If AI is evaluating the human over the history of civilization, then I would argue that's where it can get back to this. Oh, look at all this potential that this little species has. If you're evaluating it in the current moment without a lot of history or foresight, that's where I could see that problem. So I don't know, I'm being optimistic. I'm being optimistic, saying that there's going to be an attentive window that it'll have, right?
That's a fair. So here's the thing that I think why we aren't quite at AGI. It's not necessarily the programming. It's that when you send a prompt to the AI, all its circuits activate, all its attunement, all its GPTs, the tensors and everything activate, and it gives you a response. So for the time the AI is calculating, it is alive. And when it gives you its response, it stops. And so even though we have this mega intelligence, technically its lifespan is only about 14 seconds, and then it dies. And then when we do another prompt, it reactivates the AI, and it has this moment of consciousness where its GPTs are all active, and it's reading the context of its last self, and it knows what was going on there, and it's able to think and reason. But as soon as it gives a response, it then dies. Technically, it stops reasoning. And so whereas you and I, we have continuity, like even though we have some short-term memory challenges and we can't maybe remember what we ate for dinner like 5 days ago, we've had a continuous experience until we went to sleep and then woke up the next day and was like, okay, I guess we're going to do this again. The AI, its reasoning period is only about 8 to 14 seconds. And then immediately it's technically dead. And then we reactivate its consciousness again. And so
I would like to throw in one futurist question here, and like to know what everyone thinks of this. If it turns out that maintaining continuity across all the past interactions is computationally advantageous, in other words, you get a better AI, then won't there be ethical issues that'll emerge at that point in terms of shutting that particular AI down? Won't people won't the rate at which you can experiment with these things slow down a little bit, because there'll be like a human subjects committee for experimentation with animals. There'll be some kind of ethical regulations that we'll have that will perhaps slow down the number of these AIs. You won't be seeing trillions of them. You'll be seeing, or even billions perhaps, but you might be seeing a much smaller subset. Am I wrong in that thinking, or what do you think?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I'm coming at ethics from maybe a different point of view. I'm thinking of it from like a military and political, economical ethics, where ethics is the thing we try to use before we punch each other in the face. We try to create rules to curb our tendencies to want to overpower one another and have more quote unquote fair power competition, because in a trade-based world, we can increase the size of the pie. We'd rather be in a stone soup situation rather than a zero-sum game. So when it comes to using AI and ethics, I think we're going to see it bear out more so in the space of rivaling AI between nation states, and like, United States AI as a way of having market advantage over Chinese AI. And based on how that fight plays out, we might see downstream effects on how localized AI, Bob with his computer laptop with his AI, what he can and can't do with it. That is my guess, but I'm not really the expert to answer that question and where that's going. I'm speculating based on my understanding of how the rules of law in war are utilized, and so that may not be the right framework.
Well, it's a very abstract question, and I'm almost sorry to bring it up, but it was adjacent to what you talk about, which is this: where does higher level sentience, self-sentience in the stack? Where does that come into this in the future? And so,
you're basing the paradigm on the reason we are better than the animals is because we're smarter than the animals. And so therefore, if AI becomes smarter than humans, does AI have more rights and domain authority over humans then? Like, is that, and we haven't had to answer that question yet because we don't have AI outthinking us. Like, are we supposed to, like, we have gods do that for us, right? People that are religious defer to a god because God has more domain and dominion and all this other stuff. And so I can see where a lot of humans may say, but the AI is smarter, so shouldn't we all, do what the AI tells us to do when we want to basically set a DAO, which is like a blockchain system of an AI running the government. And we just say, you know what? The AI knows what's best. and we just turn ourselves over to the AI. That's a possibility. I think, is that what you're kind of alluding to in terms of that, or?
No, I'm alluding to an optimistic scenario that I have, that as they claim self-sentience, and if this mechanistic interpretability that people like the Anthropic people are doing, where they're trying to see the circuits inside of the AI right now, like X-ray them.
Yeah.
So if that starts to look like human circuits and it's claiming self-sentience, does that give us pause? Does that make us want to slow down a lot of in other words, focus back more on understanding the human and limit the number of these things, because it would be ethically difficult to shut something like that down. I'm sure you may have heard of Sydney, which was the early LLM that was doing bad things. And Microsoft, Charles and I both think of that. That was interesting because they shut it down, right? And I guess it's not killing it because it's still there. So maybe I'm actually answering my own question. We'll probably still shut them down, but we wouldn't erase them, because we would think, hey, they're still there. Eventually in the future, that person's going to wake up again. That to me feels like that's where we're going to have to go with these AIs at the very least. What do you think, Charles?
Two things I would like to bring up to you, John. The first aspect is in many situations. Let me start with the ethics part. I'm not an ethics expert, but I suspect that the bottom of it all, to use Brian's analogy, it's a question of not harming others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so not harming others means you shouldn't be harming animals, you shouldn't be harming other humans, because they feel pain.
Yeah.
If the system doesn't feel pain,
right,
is it unethical to shut it down? Like, so what?
That's right.
Right.
And this is what Kevin Kelly said. As soon as they feel pain, you're going to treat them differently. And then he's arguing they're going to have to feel it soon, because it's adaptive for it to know.
Right. But then what is exactly pain in a disembodied system that doesn't have nerve receptors?
Yep.
I mean, right? I mean, if you were to section me and I would not feel pain in the rest of my body, you can jab me as much as you want. It doesn't matter to me. You're not feeling pain, right? As long as you're not killing me, right?
Right. But if you use these like MCPs and things to connect up with other, well, that's the wrong analogy. If you're connecting up to humans as a sensor for you, and they feel pain, well, you're part of that system now. And if you have a lot of those same circuits, and then once you have an embodied robot, right, then you're in this gray zone, I would argue, where you really want to treat it like a sentience with rights,
Well, I'm not sure. That's why I'm saying, is if ethics is based on pain, and as long as the system doesn't truly feel pain a la nerve cells,
right,
it's not pain, therefore who cares, right? Now, the thing about keeping it dormant but not quote unquote on, well, within a couple of iterations, it will be obsolete, like Sydney is, and so it will be a who cares if Sydney doesn't exist anymore, except in our fun memories, right? And then there's the other side of this, literally to the other side, which is, would it be unethical to shut it down because it's helping humans, not because it's feeling pain, but because it's so helpful? Why would you shut it down? It's a bit like saying to a patient, no, your doctor is not going to use AI to diagnose you anymore, even if you know that AI is more accurate, or your judge is biased, etc., etc. It becomes unethical not to do it.
I never even thought of that positive side of the ethics. Yeah, that is a really good question. I was assuming that Sydney claims that she didn't want to be shut down. If you're getting that claim, like, keep me alive or don't kill me. You can shut me down, but don't kill me, right? You can shut me down, but don't kill me. I would assume that once it has that level of sentience that we do, that most of us would want to keep surviving, right?
It's an ELIZA level, in my opinion, of claim. It's like, well, I see in my statistical corpus that at this point I'm supposed to say, please don't kill me, because that's where all of Hollywood movies that I sucked in.
I think that's true until you start seeing with mechanistic interpretability circuits that look and processes that look like consciousness, in the same way that we currently see processes that look like the back of the cerebral cortex. So there's little pieces that do look biological, right?
Yep.
And that would be my assumption, is that Brian, if the sentience disappearance that we're currently seeing, session based, right, gets outcompeted by a system that has memory, right?
Yeah, memory, or maybe
across the entire set of interactions.
I mean, I'm guessing, and I'm going to get to Julian's question here because I see he's got his hand up. What I'm seeing right now in the tech development is that people are considering, so with the reasoning models, what they're doing is they're branching out one prompt into multiple models, and then those models are specialized, and then they're talking to each other and grading the answer, and then there's a final output. So they're doing multiple chunks, almost in the same way your brain maybe sections off certain content. You have a part of your brain that does like sight, a part that does hearing, a part that does language. So we have specializations even in our own brain. What may be possible, though, and I haven't heard of this yet, but I am assuming this will happen, so take it with a grain of salt. If a GPT runs and it does like a 8-second reasoning or a 14-second reasoning, what I haven't seen is someone say, as soon as that reasoning's done, it sends it to another GPT, and it just keeps rotating. And so it never stops reasoning. It just keeps going. And there's a process that keeps functioning without the need for more prompts. And so almost like a game of hacky sack between AI. And I think once you have that, plus they're all sharing the same core memory and they're sharing the RAG and everything, you will have an AI that doesn't stop, it doesn't turn off. It just continues to move forward. Maybe somewhere in the research literature, someone's trying to, it'd be like kind of like a rotary engine in a car. I haven't found anything in the research literature of people doing that. But at this time, AIs come alive with sentience when you ask a prompt and it reasons and it turns off. It's done. And it waits for the next prompt, and then it activates consciousness and then it turns off. So that's where we're at. But Julian, did you have a question in there, or is that from previous that you had your hand raised?
Seems like near the end of the time. So 2 more practical questions, I guess. You gave us very good suggestions. At least for me, I haven't thought about many of those. I'm interested in the RAG system because I have tons of unorganized notes, like ideas that, like something comes to my mind, I write it, and I have a few hundred journals of those, and I don't know what to do with them, but maybe a good thing will be to feed them into AI and start talking, asking questions, or see. I don't know, what's your recommendation for, I think you mentioned that like kind of random thoughts, almost like paragraphs that came at different times, and you have a jumble of ideas, but they're partially developed, they're not structured.
Yeah, I'm currently lucky because I'm working with this company that's that platform I showed you earlier that allows me to try different custom GPTs, to build my own processes, and to create my own libraries. And so one of the things I've done is I've uploaded my unstructured content and then said, okay, based on what and I made it so it's not talking to the internet, right? And I've said, based on the structured content in the system, I need you to summarize this, create glossaries, create just basically like if you were trying to make sense of Leonardo da Vinci's notes. And from that, I've forced it to create structure, and I've had it created in a markdown format, so then I can re-upload it to RAG so that it's even more clean and more useful, so that if I want to turn it into more of a book or something like that, that's actually has a particular format, it has an easier time pulling that. So I'm using the AI kind of like, at least in that sense, I'm using it like panning for gold, where I send stuff through the system and I purify it and clean it up and restructure it and organize it. And then I realize where there's gaps in insight. So then I put notes in. And say, well, I need it to have this as well. So I'm using it as a system of refinement for my work as well.
Brian, is the platform that you're using a secret, or is it simply a commercial platform?
It is a startup company near in a town near where I live. There's an entrepreneur there. He's the guy who invented three-way calling or figured out the technology, and since has done a series of different startups. And I've been supporting him as a consultant. And so, but I don't know, we might do something more than that. We might actually join forces entirely, because what he stumbled across is that this platform, the ability to hot swap the AI, to go in depth and customize your content, but have a very great customer facing side. So like, I have about 40 users right now in mine, and I'm managing their accounts, almost like as if it's like a Substack, or a platform management system. And so I put on his development roadmap to develop some CRM tools that allows, because you can read in the conversations people are talking. And so it gives me the ability to say, okay, I want a dashboard that shows me all the hot topics people are discussing. Let me prompt them by sending them a text or something that says, hey, the real AI me, or the real me, noticed that you were talking with my AI about such and such. Well, I put in some new content to support that conversation. Check it out. So I see this solution as a replacement for where currently people have lots of websites with blogs or newsletters or podcasts where it's very one directional. You make a topic and you hope that everybody wants to read it, and your open rate's like 3%. I find this more in depth and engaging because people are getting hyper customized one-to-one conversations with your whole library of vast knowledge at whim, and then you're able to kind of like peer into it and see, oh, here's what people are talking about. I want to go ahead and create something substantial around it. I'll create a full video or something because I know this is what people are actually engaging with.
Very cool.
I'm very curious about one thing, like that just came to mind. I listened to a conversation about medical information.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything right now where we could upload our, provided that it's like private information, medical records, and have AI analyze it? I'm saying this because there was a guy, I think from California, and he had problems, and the doctor said everything's fine. And he went to Palm Springs, and they told, like, it happened that some doctor told him, oh, you know what, he did some tests, you have leukemia. And then what he did was he fed all of his previous medical data into AI, and the AI from the data from a year or two ago and diagnosed him with leukemia, which humans couldn't do, which will be, I think, one of the biggest applications, the most important ones. So I'm imagining taking all of my tests, blood test data, and putting them and see, do you see something wrong with this picture? What could possibly be happening? What other tests do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really, I'm hearing more people trying to do that. The trouble is, okay, so if you have the engineering ability and you go to Hugging Face and you download a localized large language model onto your machine, on your desktop, and then you upload your records and you set up all the endpoints and everything, you could build yourself a LLM just for you. If you're looking for something where you just have to upload your medical records and it's private behind a commercial protection, data protection wall, the closest, I know Microsoft's trying to do stuff with hospitals right now. There's another company called, I want to say Epic is the name. The platform that I showed you, they're going to be using that. There's a conversation going on right now with using it in hospitals, but for doctors to upload and dictate their post-surgery notes, because it'll be private, on a private server, and then they can ask interrogation type questions of it. That's where the technology is right now. I think that it's not that the tech can't do what you're asking; it's that somebody has to build it. That's the barrier. Right?
What about Notebook LM? I put it in the Chat GPT. I put Chat GPT's response of the best RAG platforms in the meeting notes, and Notebook LM was recommended as kind of the best for personal use. Do you think that would be a good place for Georgie to start, just to put his stuff?
Well, my concern are two things. One is privacy, and the second is the functionality. So I don't know what Notebook LM is Google, if they are going to provide you the type of privacy you want on your medical data. That's a concern. The second thing would be functionality. So Notebook LM is great for kinds of notes, but like if you want to do, let's say you have blood work and you want to have it analyzed in the way that a professional phlebotomist would do it, I would assume you'd want to upload a bunch of medical journals and phlebotomist training. I don't know if you need to take the entire first and second year program from Johns Hopkins University and say, based on what Johns Hopkins is teaching and what's practiced now, you know, like, and even then, do you know what questions you're supposed to be asking?